So let me tell you all a quick story. So back in the 1950s, my granddad started our family farm operation in Western Kansas, a town called Tribune, and built that operation over the next 50 to 60 years into a $10 million operation. My dad grew up on the operation building the feed yard side. So we had a 14,000 head feed yard, but we also had a few thousand acres of ground and then a couple other things going on. But anyways, my granddad built a big enough operation where the entire family was involved. And unfortunately, in the summer of 2005, I witnessed the financial collapse of the entire operation. I was going into my junior year of high school and was with my parents when they got kicked out of their house, had to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and walk away from the life that they had been building together for the past 30 to 40 years. Now, just for some context here, between the years of 2017 and 2022, we had more than 141,000 family farm operations go out of business. So what my family went through is a common occurrence inside of the ag industry as we know it today, and it will only continue to get worse and worse as the years progress. The risk gets bigger, and we start playing with bigger and bigger dollar amounts inside of these family operations. Now, going through that entire process and that journey of witnessing the overall financial destruction of our operation, I saw firsthand the four really distinct stages that somebody goes through when they lose a farm operation that's been in the family for a lot of years. And inside of today's video, we're going to talk about each one of those stages in detail. All right, guys, so inside of today's video, I'm going to really be talking about things and how I witnessed everything that transpired from my perspective. And that first initial stage that I really witnessed my parents start going through was the blame and resentment stage. You know, when my dad came in and really told me how he came about finding out the news that the entire feed yard and family operation was going under, it was just another regular day for my dad. He was out working cattle, doing daily chores. We had a team of about 15 to 18 people that worked on the feed yard with my dad on a day-to-day basis. And not just 15 to 18 people, but their families lived on the feed yard as well. These are people that my dad, some of them he'd been working with for 20 to 25 years up to that point. So it was just another regular day. And my granddad came down and told him at the operation, basically just dropped the bomb on him that said, hey, things have gotten bad enough to where the bank is going to lock up and freeze our accounts, and we no longer have access to the operating line of credit, which I believe was about $6 million at that time. And we have to start the process of shutting everything down. Now, at that time, though, I try to think back and really imagine what my dad went through, because at that time, he's 45 years old. He'd been working on the operation since he was 5. He raised his entire family there. He never left Tribune, Kansas. He sacrificed all the things he could have done with his life and all the places he could have gone or places he could have worked or experiences he could have had. And him and my mom decided to stay with the family operation, try to, take over and expand upon the family legacy and really raise their entire family there. And to have that dropped on him just all in one day, I can only imagine the thoughts that were going through his mind as he replayed 40 years of sacrifice and hard work there to build something under the assumption that he was going to be able to take it over one day and then ultimately have it all gone in what seemed like just a matter of months there from the time that my granddad told him to the point to where we actually had the farm sale and all the equipment was getting gone. But again, though, the first stage that everybody goes through when this happens is blame and resentment, right? We are searching for an excuse or a reason as to why this happened. We are looking for a target. And this is the first thing that everybody does here. And that's the first stage of really just grief that people go through, is we're going to blame and resent anybody and everyone that ultimately put us in this position. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't my dad that necessarily put himself in the position, but was it his responsibility to handle it? Yeah, unfortunately it was. And that's the tough thing about life and running a business is there's a lot of variables and a lot of people involved here. And sometimes the decisions from other people will impact you, but it's your responsibility as a business owner to ultimately take accountability and take responsibility for any of those things that could happen, right? And be thinking through those things. And unfortunately, it takes a while for people to get to that phase there where they're accepting of that. And we spend some time in this blame and resentment phase, which is honestly just a natural progression as you go through losing a family operation and losing, really your life's work here. Stage number 2 is what I'll call the identity and purpose crisis. So after the feed yard went under, I remember my parents very distinctly telling me exactly where cash was inside the house because their accounts were locked, right? My parents had, at the time, I remember a few $100,000 that they had, put away over 30 years of building something there. And that was all frozen, right? They couldn't get access to anything. And I remember my dad telling me that, hey, we got $12,000 cash hidden in one of the access points to our attic. And he said, it's above our closet. And he goes, I'm just telling you that in case we ever need you to get it for us. That is literally all we have. And again, thinking about that, a family man that raised 3 children had built a life to end up with $12,000 cash, guys. Like that's tough here. I think about that time, and it's tough for me to really capture the emotion that I felt during that time, but I also witnessed during that time. I was too young to where I didn't really understand it. I was, in high school at the time, but my parents, that was everything for them, right? And thinking about where I'm at now in my life, if that were to happen to me with a wife and 4 daughters that I have inside our household, I would feel destroyed. I would feel wrecked as a man. I would feel like a gigantic failure. I would feel just all these things that my dad was probably feeling. But the biggest thing here, though, and talking about stage 2 when it comes to identity crisis, my dad's entire identity was cattleman, right? For 40 years of his life, that's all he did. That's what he loved doing. And to this day, I would argue that he still loves doing that and still misses that. But the thing is, though, is I witnessed him go through a transition over the next 3 to 5 years of trying to figure out who he was, because it got to survival mode and he had to go find some job to take care and support his family. And I always respect my dad for that. If he ever watches this video one day, I hope he understands that. I always respect him for doing what needed to be done in a time where it wasn't easy, because he went from running a team, right, and essentially being his own boss, besides my granddad, who was obviously in control of the entire operation. But he went from basically running his day-to-day to driving trash truck for the local county that we lived in. Not saying that's a negative job, but it definitely is a downgrade compared to running a team of 15 people and being in control of your own schedule and things like that, and having that freedom there. Again, talking about identity crisis, everything had to shift for him. And I don't think we give this whole concept of identity when it comes to farmers and ranchers the amount of respect that it deserves, because that is truly who these people are. It is everything about them. They would die for this stuff and they love it, right? And you rip that away from them, there is chaos that ensues from that. Not maybe, to you and me, we maybe don't see that, but I know for my dad internally, there were so many internal battles there, because now he had to change who he was, right? He had to let go and step into this new version of himself, which is not easy. And I've had to do that even in my life since I left the banking industry and stuff like that. I had to transition and really step into a new version of myself in order to create a different result in my life. It's not easy, right? Because you get into this push and pull here, where once you start stepping into that new version of yourself, that old version is it's like holding on to you, right? It's trying to pull you back in, and it feels, this happens ultimately because that old version, you're basically killing it, right? And it feels that death is coming. And so it's trying to pull you back into that. And it's just not an easy period, right? And that's what I witnessed my dad go through. And this is why I say it was a 3 to 5 year transition, because when you rip somebody's identity away from them, it is a transition. It takes a long time for that person to adapt and change and ultimately move on with life. All right, stage number 3, when it comes to losing a family farm operation and everything you've worked for 40 years, is the acceptance stage and really the moving on stage. So after about 5 years, after the feed yard and everything went under, is when I really started to notice my parents being able to move on, right? They've gotten to the point where life had changed, right? They have their other positions, their other jobs. They were able to start kind of saving some of their own money, got their feet back under them a little bit there. But again, though, it's still not an easy stage, because accepting the truth for what it turned out to be is still very difficult, right? I remember at this time, my dad was still racking his brain on things he could have done differently. Like, imagine working somewhere for 40 years and how many events and experiences transpired over that 40-year period, and thinking back through man, if I would have done this differently or that differently, if I would have asked more questions. I did an interview with my parents back in 2020 when we filmed the Saving the American Farmer documentary. That was the first time that my dad was ever actually interviewed one-on-one to talk about his experience. And the 2 things that he wishes he would have done is, number 1, he wishes he would have asked more financial questions, right? He trusted my granddad and ultimately my aunts and other people that worked inside the family office there, that they were making all the right financial decisions. But ultimately that turned out to not be completely accurate, and some things happened, and ultimately my parents lost their savings and all that type of stuff there as well. But he wishes he would have asked more questions. But the second thing is, he wishes he would have stepped away from the operation and went and experienced some other things too, right? And not been afraid to do that. My dad was raised in an environment where he felt obligated to go back to the family farm operation. That's just how my granddad was. He was very old school, and that, he expected all of his kids to come back and support the family and really build upon the family legacy there. And ultimately my dad wishes he would have taken time away, right? And so anyways, I say all this because my parents had to go through this acceptance phase here, where it was what it was, and there's nothing they could change about it. And they could either dwell on it for the rest of their life, which some of my family members honestly still do, or they can move on with their life and look forward to what God had planned for them going forward. And I feel like my parents, did a successful job at that. It takes time though. It really does. And this acceptance phase is tough for everybody, I think. And it's just one of those things you have to go through as you are committing to moving forward from the events that transpired and moving on with your life. All right, stage 4 here, and the last one here, is the healing and forgiveness phase. So even in the acceptance phase, it doesn't mean you've actually, forgiven or forgotten about the events and things that transpired, because after the feed yard went under, there was a lot of skeletons that came out the closet across the entire operation about my granddad and things like that. Things that to this day still really anger me and still, make me mad at some level. And I always find myself wondering, how were my parents able to forgive? How were my parents able to heal? Because my parents still took care of my granddad in his final years. My granddad passed away in 2015, and I watched my parents take care of them. My dad would haul him to appointments in Wichita, which was a 5-hour drive one way, and he would do that on a regular basis. And he did it on the day that my granddad died. And I sit there and I think back through all the skeletons that came out of the closet, just the ones I know about. I'm sure 40 years of history of my dad working on an operation, there's so many more things that happened that I don't even know about. But still, to get to that stage of life and be able to have an open heart to step in and be able to forgive, right, and heal appropriately, and not hold any grudges or resentment there, and just really release it all. And those were some of the things there. Again, witnessing my parents actually do that, it makes me have so much more respect for them, for who they are as individuals and as people, to go through such a painful experience and have things that have happened and find out the truth about things, and still able to let go of that and still take care of your parents, for my dad's position and everything there. And I think, a lot of people, they're not able to do that, right? And this gets into that healing phase there, where at some point you have to forgive. It doesn't mean you forget things, but you can forgive. And ultimately that forgiveness is what's going to allow you to move on. At least that's what I witnessed my parents go through inside of their journey. So guys, at the end of the day, I started off this video talking about 141,000 or more than 141,000 family farm operations went under between 2017 to 2022. I can't even imagine how much, what the numbers are going to show the past 2 years with increasing interest rates and things like that, and all the economic volatility and things like that that people are dealing with here. But at the end of the day, guys, this is why we started Legacy Farmer, to help people really master their finances and go from a place of disorganization and chaos financially to a structured, well-organized and very cleanly organized financially operation, where they know without a doubt exactly where they're at with their money and where every penny is going. It is pretty consistent for us to talk to family farm operations that are coming into Legacy Farmer, and when we ask them how much money they feel they're losing inside the operation every year, and they don't know where it's going, they don't know how they're losing it, it's always a minimum 100 grand, right? Just leaking out the bottom of their operation there. And that is the entire purpose of what we do in Legacy Farmer, to plug those holes, to make you become the financial master inside of the operation, and give you the education that honestly you don't get in school, you're not getting into college, the bank's not sharing it with you. We want you to know exactly what's going on the financial side of your operation from point A to point Z, and know exactly through and through where every penny is really going inside the operation. So if you want help with that, guys, and you've watched a lot of my videos over this time, you connect with what I'm saying, and our purpose for being here and what we are fighting for inside of Legacy Farmer, I invite you just to apply to work with our team. Click the link below. You'll be able to schedule and book a free call with our team. On that call, we're going to figure out some more about your operation and learn about you, but it's also going to be an opportunity for you to learn about us as well. And through that conversation, we're going to decide whether or not we're the right fit to work together. So my friends, if that's of interest to you, click the link below and then schedule a call with our team, and we'll talk to you on the call.